The clock on the dashboard read 3:47 p.m. when Officer Grayson spotted Jalen King walking alone. Just another black teenager in a white neighborhood, suspicious by default in the officer's eyes. The resulting stop was textbook harassment, but Grayson's mocking laughter when Jalen mentioned his father's Special Forces career would prove to be his first and most catastrophic mistake. What the suspended ex-military washout couldn't recognize was the disciplined dignity in the boy's eyes, a mirror image of the man who had taught him to face injustice with quiet strength. 3 days later, when security cameras captured black SUVs circling the neighborhood, and Grayson began digging into classified files that returned only redacted warnings, the real game was already in motion. Isaiah King was coming home, and Oak Ridge Heights would never be the same. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The afternoon sun beat down on Jalen King's shoulders as he walked the familiar route home from school. His headphones pumped music directly into his ears, creating a bubble that separated him from the world around him. At 16, Jalen had mastered the art of moving through his neighborhood like a shadow, present but unseen. Or at least, that's what he preferred. But in Oak Ridge Heights, a predominantly white suburban neighborhood where the King family had lived for the past decade, being unseen wasn't always possible. Especially not for Jalen. As he passed Mrs. Whitaker's house, the curtains twitched. They always did. The older woman never failed to track his movements as he walked by her pristine garden. Jalen kept his eyes forward, pretending not to notice. Just as his father had taught him, "Keep your head up, but your guard higher," Isaiah King had told him once. "Some people will always see you before they see who you are." The corner store came next. Inside, Mr. Peterson's eyes locked onto Jalen through the window, his gaze suspicious and unwavering. Jalen had been in that store 100 times, buying snacks or drinks after basketball practice, yet the owner still watched him like he might stuff his pockets at any moment. Jalen turned the volume up on his music. It was easier that way. He was halfway home when the police cruiser slowed beside him. Jalen felt it before he saw it. That distinct crawl of a vehicle matching his pace. His stomach tightened. He'd seen this before, though usually it happened to older guys, not to high school sophomores walking home on a Tuesday. The window rolled down, revealing Officer Grayson's stern face. Jalen didn't know the cop's name yet, but he would soon enough. "Hey, you. Hold up a minute," the officer called. Jalen stopped, removing his headphones. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "If they stop you, be polite, be calm, don't give them reasons." "Yes, sir," Jalen said, his voice steady despite the anxiety climbing his throat. Officer Bradley Grayson was new to the Oak Ridge Heights Police Department. At 32, he carried himself with the aggressive confidence of someone with something to prove. His close-cropped hair and rigid posture betrayed his military background, though few knew he'd washed out of training before seeing any real action, a detail he conveniently omitted from most conversations. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Grayson asked, eyes narrowing as he scanned Jalen from head to toe. "I live here, sir. Just walking home from school." "ID?" Jalen hesitated. "I'm 16. I don't have a driver's license yet, just my school ID." He reached slowly for his backpack. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Grayson snapped, his hand instinctively moving toward his holster. Jalen froze, his hands visible in front of him. "My school ID is in my backpack, sir." Grayson exited the vehicle, circling around to where Jalen stood on the sidewalk. A few neighbors slowed their cars, watching. Others peeked through windows, drawn to the spectacle of the new officer questioning the black teenager. "What's in the bag?" "Empty it out." "Just books and school stuff," Jalen said, carefully setting his backpack on the ground and unzipping it. As Jalen removed his textbooks and notebooks, Grayson's demeanor shifted from cautious to contemptuous. The boy's backpack contained nothing but school materials, a water bottle, and basketball shoes. No weapons, no drugs, nothing to justify the stop. But rather than ending the encounter, Grayson doubled down. "Where do you live exactly?" he demanded. "Cedar Street, sir. Number 1742. Just 3 blocks that way." Parents home? My mom will be home from work soon. What about your dad? Where's he? Grayson's tone had changed, becoming almost conversational, but with a mocking edge that made Jalen's skin crawl. He's away for work. What kind of work keeps a man away from his family? Grayson pressed, leaning closer. You kids never seem to have a man at home, huh? The implication was clear and it stung. Jalen could feel heat rising to his face, but he kept his expression neutral, just as his father had taught him. My dad's in special forces, Jalen replied quietly. The words came out matter of fact, without bravado or challenge. Just the truth, simply stated. Grayson's face split into a wide grin before he burst into laughter, the sound echoing down the quiet suburban street. Special forces? He repeated, loud enough for the gathering onlookers to hear. Your daddy's G.I. Joe, huh? That's rich, kid. Jalen said nothing, his face a mask that betrayed none of the anger and humiliation churning inside him. Hey, Miller, Grayson called to another officer who had pulled up in a second cruiser. This kid says his daddy's in the special forces. Maybe he works with Chuck Norris. Officer Miller chuckled uncomfortably, glancing at the growing number of witnesses on the street. Unnoticed by either officer, a girl about Jalen's age stood half-hidden behind a tree across the street. Maya Thompson, a classmate of Jalen's, had her phone out, recording the encounter. Her finger hovered over the stop button several times, but something told her to keep filming. Listen, G.I. Joe Jr., Grayson said, stepping closer to Jalen. Next time you want to make up stories, pick something believable. I was in the military. I know what real soldiers look like. Jalen remained silent, his eyes steady but not challenging. He knew better than to talk back to a cop, especially one who seemed determined to provoke him. Get your stuff and move along, Grayson finally said, apparently bored with the lack of reaction. And stay out of trouble. Jalen carefully repacked his bag, conscious of the eyes watching him. He placed his headphones back over his ears, though he didn't turn the music on. As he walked away, he could still hear Grayson's voice behind him. Special Forces my ass, the officer muttered to Miller. Bet Dad's Special Forces of the couch, probably never even met the kid. Jalen kept walking, his steps measured and calm despite the storm inside him. He didn't look back, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing how deeply the officer's words had cut. As Grayson returned to his cruiser, he paused, a thought forming. Hey, Miller, you know anything about a Special Forces guy living in this neighborhood? Miller shrugged. Not that I've heard of. This King kid. I'm curious now. Find out who his dad really is, would you? Sure thing, Miller replied, though his tone suggested he had no intention of following through on what seemed like a petty request. But Grayson wasn't letting it go. Something about the kid's calm confidence had gotten under his skin. Jalen hadn't backed down or shown fear, and that bothered Grayson more than he cared to admit. As Jalen disappeared around the corner, Maya Thompson slipped her phone into her pocket and hurried away in the opposite direction, the video safely recorded. She didn't know what she would do with it yet, but something told her it might be important. Grayson watched the street for a moment longer, then got back into his cruiser. He had a new mission now. Find out the truth about Isaiah King. The front door of 1742 Cedar Street closed quietly behind Jalen as he stepped inside the modest two-story home. Unlike many of the showpiece houses in Oak Ridge Heights, the King residence was humble but well-maintained, a testament to Angela King's meticulous care, despite working full-time as a hospital administrator. Jalen dropped his backpack by the door and stood for a moment in the entryway, letting the familiar sense of home wash over him. Lemon furniture polish, the faint hint of the jasmine candles his mother loved, the lingering aroma of last night's dinner. The walls of the living room held a careful selection of family photos. Angela and Jalen at his middle school graduation, Jalen as a toddler in the backyard, the three of them, mother, father, son, at the beach 5 years ago, squinting into the sun. But there were no photos of Isaiah in uniform, nothing that suggested his military career. This was deliberate. Jalen walked to the kitchen and grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. The encounter with Officer Grayson replayed in his mind as he took a bite, the crisp sound filling the quiet house. A memory surfaced. Jalen, at 8 years old, sitting cross-legged in the backyard while his father taught him how to tie special knots. "Why do I need to know this, Dad?" he had asked. "We don't go camping much." Isaiah's smile had been warm but serious. "These are skills, son. Some skills you show the world, like your basketball. Others, you keep hidden until needed. Being invisible, when necessary, is sometimes the greatest advantage." At the time, Jalen hadn't fully understood what his father meant. Now, at 16, pieces were starting to come together. The sound of keys in the front door pulled Jalen from his thoughts. Angela King entered, her nurse's scrubs replaced by the business attire she wore as a hospital administrator. Despite the long day, her posture remained straight, her movements precise. "Hey, baby," she greeted him, setting down her purse. "How was school?" "Fine," Jalen replied automatically. Angela gave him a look that said she didn't believe him but wouldn't press. Not yet. She had a sixth sense when it came to her son. "Homework?" "Just some calculus and a history paper." She nodded, then paused, studying his face. Something happened today. It wasn't a question. Jalen considered brushing it off but knew it was pointless. His mother always saw through him. "Got stopped by a cop on the way home." Angela stiffened, her casual demeanor instantly replaced with alert concern. "What happened? What did he want?" "Nothing. Just the usual. Asked what I was doing here, checked my backpack. Did he give a reason for stopping you?" "No." Angela's jaw tightened. "Did you get his name or badge number?" "Grayson, I think." "He's new." She nodded, filing the information away. "What else? I know there's more." Jalen hesitated. "He asked about Dad." The change in Angela was subtle but immediate. A slight narrowing of her eyes, a barely perceptible straightening of her already perfect posture. "What did you tell him?" "Just that he's in special forces. Nothing else." Angela was quiet for a long moment. "Jalen, we've talked about this. You know not to—" "I know, Mom," he interrupted. "But he was saying stuff about how kids like me never have dads at home. I didn't give details. I couldn't let him think Dad abandoned us." Angela's expression softened. She crossed the kitchen and pulled her son into a hug, something she knew he was increasingly reluctant to accept as he grew older. But tonight, he didn't pull away. "Listen to me," she said, her voice low and serious. "Your father's work is not something we discuss with strangers, especially not with police. It's not just about privacy. It's about safety. Our safety, your father's safety." "I know," Jalen said. "I'm sorry. It's okay. Just be careful. This Officer Grayson, if he asks again, just say your dad works in government consulting, nothing more." Jalen nodded, though he wondered why the mundane cover story was necessary if his father's work was legitimate. Later that night, as Jalen worked on his history paper, his phone buzzed with a text from Maya Thompson. They weren't close friends, more like acquaintances who shared a few classes, but her message was direct. "Need to talk to you tomorrow about what happened after school." Jalen stared at the message, wondering how Maya knew about his encounter with Grayson. He typed back a simple "okay" and set his phone aside, unease settling over him like a fog. The next morning at school, Maya found him before first period, pulling him aside near the band room where few students gathered. "I saw what happened yesterday," she said without preamble. "With that cop." Jalen's expression remained neutral. So it was messed up. The way he talked to you." She hesitated, then added, "I recorded some of it." Jalen's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of his surprise. "Why would you do that?" "Because it wasn't right," Maya said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "My dad's a civil rights attorney. He says always document." Jalen nodded slowly, processing this information. "What are you going to do with it?" "Nothing, unless you want me to." "But, was it true? About your dad?" The question hung between them. Jalen considered brushing it off, denying it, or changing the subject. Instead, he simply said, Yes. Maya studied his face for a moment, then nodded. Cool. Just wanted to know. The conversation ended as the warning bell rang, but as Jalen headed to first period, he felt Maya's question lingering. Was it true about his dad? Yes, but even Jalen didn't know the full extent of what that meant. Word spread fast at Oak Ridge High. By lunchtime, somehow, people knew about Jalen's confrontation with Officer Grayson. As he sat alone at his usual table, Tyler Wilson and his friends approached. "Hey, King," Tyler called, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Heard you told Grayson your dad's like Rambo or something." Jalen kept eating his sandwich, not looking up. "My dad says your dad works at Burger Force, not Special Forces," Tyler continued, encouraged by his friend's snickering. "Your dad talks about my family at dinner?" "Weird," Jalen replied coolly, still not looking up. Tyler's face reddened. "Whatever, man. Everyone knows you're lying. Your dad probably ran off years ago." Jalen finally looked up, his dark eyes meeting. "Tyler's." He said nothing, but something in his steady gaze made Tyler shift uncomfortably. "Come on, guys," Tyler muttered, retreating with his friends to their regular table. Maya slid into the seat across from Jalen a moment later. "Ignore them," she said. "Tyler's dad is that real estate agent who got caught posting racist stuff online last year." Jalen's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "You know a lot about everyone's parents," Maya shrugged. "My mom works at the courthouse. I hear things." They ate in companionable silence for a while before Maya spoke again. "So Special Forces. That's intense." "I don't want to talk about it," Jalen said quietly. Maya nodded. "Fair enough. But if that cop keeps bothering you, tell me. Like I said, my dad's an attorney." Meanwhile, across town, Officer Grayson was beginning his shift with a new mission. He'd spent the previous evening searching social media for information about the King family, but found little. Angela King had a basic Facebook profile with minimal posts and no photos of her husband. Jalen didn't appear to have any social media presence at all, unusual for a teenager. Grayson started his patrol in the Cedar Street area, driving slowly past the King residence. It looked quiet, ordinary. Nothing to suggest a Special Forces operative lived there. He parked down the block and approached an elderly woman working in her garden. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, flashing his most charming smile. "Officer Grayson, just checking in on the neighborhood. How long have you lived here?" "Going on 30 years," she replied proudly. "So you must know most of your neighbors. The Kings, down at 1742. What's their story?" The woman, Martha Jenkins, straightened up, wiping dirt from her hands. "Angela's a dear, works at the hospital. The boy Jalen, he's quiet but polite. Always offers to shovel my walk in winter. And Mr. King? Isaiah, right?" Martha's expression turned thoughtful. "He's away a lot. Military, I think, though Angela doesn't talk about it. Very private family." "Military, huh? Any idea what branch, or what he does?" Martha shook her head. "Like I said, they're private. Isaiah comes and goes. Sometimes he's home for months, then gone just as long. Nice man, though. Fixed my porch steps last spring when he was home." Grayson nodded, filing the information away. "Thanks for your time, ma'am. Just getting to know the community." As he continued his inquiries throughout the day, the pattern repeated. Neighbors knew the Kings but had little specific information about Isaiah. He was rarely seen, always working, away, but no one seemed to know exactly what he did. That evening, Grayson sat in his cruiser outside the King residence, watching the house from a distance. The lights were on in what he assumed was the kitchen. Through the window he could see Angela moving around, and occasionally Jalen passed by. No sign of a third family member. Grayson's radio crackled. "Unit 4, what's your 20? "Cedar Street," he replied. "Just finishing patrol. Copy that. Shift's almost over. Head in for debrief." Grayson started the engine but took one last look at the King house before driving away. The boy's claim still bothered him. Special Forces? It seemed far-fetched, yet no one in the neighborhood could confirm or deny it. The mystery only fueled his curiosity. Later that night, Angela King's phone rang just after midnight. She reached for it in the darkness, checking the caller ID. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? Silence. No breathing, no background noise, just emptiness. Hello? She repeated more firmly. The line went dead. Angela sat up, in bed, fully awake now. It was the third such call this week. She checked that her bedroom door was closed, then reached for her secure phone, a separate device kept hidden in her nightstand. She sent a text to a number saved only as I. Another call, same pattern. The response came seconds later. Noted, Protocol 7. Angela deleted both messages, returned the phone to its hiding place, and tried to go back to sleep. But her mind raced with worry. 16 years of careful living, of guarding their family's secrets, and now this new officer was asking questions. It wasn't a coincidence. The next day, Officer Grayson sat at his desk in the police station, coffee in hand, scrolling through database records. He'd found basic information on Angela King, employment history, driver's license, property taxes. All normal. Jalen's school records showed he was a good student with no disciplinary issues. But Isaiah King was proving more elusive. Grayson had basic confirmation that Isaiah existed. Marriage license, joint property ownership with Angela, listed as father on Jalen's birth certificate. But his employment history was vague, and when Grayson attempted to pull his military file, he hit an unexpected roadblock. Classified clearance required. What the hell? Grayson muttered, staring at his screen. Problem? Asked Sergeant Wallace, passing by his desk. Grayson quickly switched screens. No, sir. Just researching something. After Wallace moved on, Grayson returned to the database. The classified designation could mean many things. Isaiah could be a military contractor, intelligence analyst, or any number of roles that required security clearance. But it didn't necessarily confirm special forces. Still, it was enough to make Grayson uncomfortable. He had told colleagues about the punk kid with the special forces fairy tale, expecting to disprove Jalen's claim easily. Now, he wasn't so sure. That evening, Grayson returned to Cedar Street in his personal vehicle, a black Dodge Charger with tinted windows. He parked a block away from the King residence and settled in to watch. It was after 11 when the lights in the house finally went out. Grayson waited another hour before slipping out of his car and making his way toward the property. He stayed in the shadows, moving with the confidence of someone who believed, himself unobserved. His plan was simple. Get a closer look, maybe peek in the windows, see if there was any evidence of Isaiah King's presence or absence. What Grayson didn't realize was that he was being watched. 3 houses down, in a darkened room, a figure observed Grayson's approach through specialized optics. When the officer crept into the King's side yard, the figure lifted a secure phone and spoke quietly. At midnight. We have activity at the King residence. Local police, plain clothes, unauthorized surveillance. Identity confirmed as Officer Bradley Grayson. A pause then. Understood. Continue monitoring only. The figure returned to the window, watching as Grayson crept around the King house, peering into windows, testing the back door. Eventually, the officer retreated to his vehicle and drove away. Only then did the figure send a final message. They're sniffing around the King residence. Protocol escalation recommended. The response was immediate and brief. Acknowledged. Informing Ghost. As Grayson drove home, satisfied with his reconnaissance though he had learned little, he had no idea that his actions had triggered a response far beyond the quiet suburban neighborhood of Oak Ridge Heights. No idea that the name Isaiah King was now being discussed in secure facilities where few had clearance to enter. No idea that he had just stepped into shadows far bigger than he could imagine. Dawn broke over Oak Ridge Heights with a silence that belied the growing tension in the neighborhood. Officer Bradley Grayson sat in his cruiser, parked a block away from the King residence. He'd been there since 5 a.m., operating on little sleep and fueled by a mixture of coffee and obsession. The King's house remained quiet, curtains drawn. No movement, no sign of life. Grayson checked his watch. He was officially off duty, having ended his shift an hour ago. What he was planning wasn't department procedure. It crossed lines, but he couldn't let go of the nagging feeling that Jalen King's claim about his father was more than just a teenager's defense mechanism. He waited until Angela's car pulled out of the driveway. She wore scrubs today, an early hospital shift. 20 minutes later, Jalen emerged, backpack slung over his shoulder, headphones in place. Grayson sank lower in his seat as the boy walked past, headed for school. The house was empty now. Perfect. Grayson circled around to the back of the property, keeping to neighbors' tree lines to avoid being seen. The King's backyard was modest but well-maintained. A small wooden shed stood near the back fence. Grayson tried the door. Locked. He glanced around quickly, then removed a small tool from his pocket. The lock was basic, and it took only seconds to manipulate it open. The door swung inward with a soft creak. Inside, the shed was orderly. Garden tools hung from hooks on one wall. A lawnmower sat in the corner. Shelves held various household supplies. Nothing suspicious, nothing unusual. Grayson felt a flicker of disappointment. Then his eyes caught something. Behind a stack of terracotta pots on the highest shelf, the corner of a box was visible. Standing on his tiptoes, Grayson carefully pulled it down. The metal box was old and dented, secured with a small padlock. Grayson examined it, weighing his options. Breaking a second lock would be harder to explain if caught. Instead, he took out his phone and photographed the box from several angles, then reached to return it to its hiding place. As he stretched upward, the box slipped slightly from his grasp, and the lid shifted. It wasn't locked after all. The padlock was there but not secured. Grayson hesitated only briefly before opening it. Inside were a few items, some foreign currency, a small notebook filled with what looked like code or shorthand, and underneath it all, a photograph. It showed a younger Isaiah King in desert camouflage uniform, standing beside 3 other men whose faces were partially shadowed. Isaiah's face was half in shadow too, but his eyes were clear and piercing, staring directly at the camera with an intensity that made Grayson uncomfortable. No insignia or identifying markings were visible on the uniforms. No indication of where or when the photo was taken. Grayson quickly photographed everything, then carefully returned the items exactly as he'd found them. He replaced the box on the shelf and left the shed, making sure to lock the door behind him. Back in his car, Grayson studied the photos he'd taken, zooming in on Isaiah's face. There was something in those eyes that bothered him. A hardness, a knowing look that seemed to stare right through the camera at whoever might view the photo years later. "Who the hell are you really, Isaiah King?" Grayson muttered. Later that morning, Angela King stormed into the police station, her hospital ID still hanging around her neck. Her normally composed demeanor was replaced with barely contained fury as she approached the front desk. "I need to file a complaint," she stated, her voice controlled but firm. Officer Jenkins looked up. "What seems to be the problem, ma'am?" "Someone broke into my shed this morning. I have a security camera that captured it." She placed her phone on the counter, showing a clear image of Grayson picking the lock. "And that someone is one of your officers." Jenkins's eyes widened as he recognized Grayson on the screen. "Ma'am, I'll need to get the sergeant." "I know exactly who he is," Angela continued. "Officer Bradley Grayson, the same officer who has been harassing my son and asking invasive questions about my family around the neighborhood." Sergeant Wallace emerged from his office, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on here?" Angela repeated her complaint, showing him the security footage. Wallace's expression darkened. "Mrs. King, I want to assure you we take this very seriously. Please come into my office so we can take your formal statement." An hour later, Angela left the station with a copy of her complaint and a case number. Sergeant Wallace promised a full investigation, but she hadn't missed the way his demeanor changed when she mentioned Isaiah's name. Something in his eyes, recognition perhaps, or caution. That evening, as Angela recounted the events to Jalen, her phone buzzed with a text. She checked it, then frowned. "What is it?" Jalen asked. "Nothing," she said, a bit too quickly. Just work. But it wasn't work. The message read simply, "Complaint filed has been flagged. Stand by." No signature, no explanation needed. Angela deleted it immediately. Meanwhile, across town, Maya Thompson sat at her computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. What had started as curiosity about Jalen's dad had turned into a deep dive into military forums and declassified mission reports. Maya had always been good with computers, better than most adults realized. She navigated through archived news reports, public military records, and specialized forums where veterans gathered to share sanitized versions of their experiences. It had taken days of searching, but finally she found something. A passing reference in a redacted mission report. Extraction team led by King successfully retrieved the asset despite heavy opposition. And then, in a forum post by a retired Marine, when they sent in the silencers, we knew it was serious. Those guys were ghosts, in and out before anyone knew they were there. Another reply mentioned Operation Silencer as one of the most classified units in recent military history, with much of their work still heavily redacted decades later. Maya leaned back in her chair, processing this information. She couldn't be certain this was Jalen's father. King was a common name, after all. But the timeline matched, and the secrecy around the unit would explain the family's privacy. Her bedroom door opened, and her father poked his head in. "Still up, Maya? It's after midnight." "Just finishing some research," she replied quickly, closing her browser tabs. James Thompson studied his daughter's face. "This wouldn't happen to be about the King boy and that officer you mentioned, would it?" Maya hesitated. "Maybe." James sighed. "Maya, I know you want to help, but be careful. If what you suspect about the father is true, these aren't waters you want to go wading into without a life vest." "What do you mean?" "Just be careful. If Angela King needs legal help, tell her to call me directly. But otherwise, keep your distance from this situation." After her father left, Maya reopened her browser. There was one more reference she'd found. A heavily redacted mission report with a signature line that was partially visible. "Ah King, Operation Silencer, Unit 8. It wasn't conclusive proof, but it was enough to make her believe Jalen had been telling the truth. The following days brought a strange calm to Oak Ridge Heights. Grayson had been temporarily reassigned to desk duty pending the investigation into Angela's complaint. Jalen walked to and from school without incident, but there were subtle changes in the neighborhood. Black SUVs with tinted windows were spotted circling the area at night. Neighbors noticed unmarked vehicles parked at odd hours. Whispers started spreading. Something was happening in the quiet suburb one evening. As Jalen stopped at Thompson's Corner Market for a Gatorade after basketball practice, he found himself face to face with Grayson. The officer was in civilian clothes, buying cigarettes at the counter. Their eyes met in the store mirror. Grayson turned slowly, a smile spreading across his face that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, if it isn't G.I. Joe's boy," he said, loud enough for the other customers to hear. "Still telling fairy tales, soldier boy?" Jalen said nothing, simply held Grayson's gaze as he placed his drink on the counter and pulled out his wallet. Grayson stepped closer. "You know what's funny? I did some digging on your dad. Interesting stuff." Jalen kept his expression neutral, but his heart rate accelerated. He paid for his drink and turned to leave. "I'm not done talking to you," Grayson said, his voice hardening. "But I'm done listening," Jalen replied quietly, echoing his father's calm stare, eyes that gave nothing away while seeing everything. Something in that look unnerved Grayson. It was too familiar, too reminiscent of the photograph he'd found. The same steady confidence, the same unspoken strength. "You think you're tough because Daddy taught you some tricks?" Grayson stepped even closer, invading Jalen's personal space. "Let me tell you something, kid. Your dad's not who you think he is. Men like that, they're not heroes. They're just good at killing." Jalen didn't flinch, didn't step back. "Are we done here, sir? I need to get home." The lack of reaction only frustrated Grayson more. He wanted to provoke the boy, to see him lose control. But Jalen remained composed. his dignity intact despite the public humiliation. The store owner, Mr. Thompson, cleared his throat loudly. "Everything okay over there?" "Fine," Grayson muttered, finally stepping back. "Just catching up with a local troublemaker." Jalen walked out of the store, feeling Grayson's eyes boring into his back. Once outside, he took a deep breath, steadying himself. His father's words echoed in his mind. "Control the things you can control. Your reactions are yours alone." The next day, Jalen was playing basketball with friends at the public court when police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Officer Grayson emerged from the first vehicle, followed by 2 other officers. "Jalen King," Grayson called out, striding onto the court. "You need to come with us." The game stopped. Everyone turned to stare. "What for?" Jalen asked, the basketball still in his hands. "There was a disturbance reported. Witnesses say you were involved." "What disturbance?" "I've been here for the past hour." Grayson approached, handcuffs already out. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Jalen's friends protested. "He didn't do anything. We've all been right here." But Grayson wasn't interested in their testimonies. This was personal now, a power play meant to put Jalen in his place. To prove that Grayson was in control, "Turn around, hands behind your back," Grayson ordered. Jalen complied, knowing resistance would only escalate the situation. As the cold metal closed around his wrists, he remembered his father's words once more. "In a room full of wolves, become the quiet storm." Maya watched from across the street, recording everything on her phone. This time, she was live streaming it to her private social media account, where her father could see it. James Thompson was already calling colleagues before the police cruiser carrying Jalen left the scene. At the station, Jalen sat alone in a holding room. Not technically an interrogation room. He hadn't been charged with anything specific yet, but the message was clear. Grayson wanted him to sweat. Angela arrived at the station in a tornado of controlled fury. "Where is my son?" she demanded at the front desk. "Jalen King. An officer brought him in from the basketball court about an hour ago." The desk sergeant checked his computer. "He's being held pending investigation of a disturbance." "What disturbance?" "My son was playing basketball with friends. I have multiple witnesses. Ma'am, you'll need to speak with the arresting officer." "Then get him. Now. And I want to see my son immediately." "That's not possible right now. Officer Grayson is processing." "Officer Grayson?" Angela's voice sharpened. "The same officer who is currently under investigation for breaking into my property? The one who's been harassing my son? He's in charge of this case?" The sergeant looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I understand your concern." "No, you don't. Get your supervisor. Now. Or the next call I make will be to my lawyer, followed by every news outlet in the state." While Angela fought to see her son, Grayson entered the holding room where Jalen waited. "Comfortable?" Grayson asked, a smirk playing at his lips. Jalen said nothing. "You know, I could charge you with assault. Got a witness who says you shoved someone at that court. Your word against his." Still, Jalen remained silent. "Not so tough without Daddy around to protect you, huh?" Grayson leaned closer. "Where is he anyway? On some secret mission? Or maybe he just doesn't care enough to show up?" Jalen looked directly into Grayson's eyes. "Are you charging me with something, sir? Or is this just more harassment?" Grayson's phone rang before he could respond. He checked it, frowned, and stepped out of the room. In the hallway, Sergeant Wallace waited with a grave expression. "What the hell are you doing, Grayson? This kid's mother is raising hell in the lobby, threatening lawyers and media. And she's right. You're under investigation for the shed incident. You shouldn't be anywhere near this case." "The kid was involved in a disturbance. I was responding to a call." "What call?" "There's nothing in dispatch about any disturbance at the basketball court," Grayson faltered. "I received information from a confidential source." "Bullshit," Wallace snapped. "This ends now. The kid goes home with his mother, and you're suspended, effective immediately. Turn in your badge and gun." "You can't do that. This isn't about the kid. There's something going on with the father. Something big." I'm telling you, Isaiah King isn't who he claims to be. Wallace's expression changed subtly. All the more reason to back off, Grayson. Trust me on this. You're in waters too deep for swimming. As they argued, a strange quiet fell over the station. The usual chatter of radios and phones seemed to dim. Officers at their desks straightened almost imperceptibly. Eyes shifted toward the entrance. Through the front doors walked a man of average height with a military straight posture. Dressed in jeans, boots, and a simple gray t-shirt, there was nothing particularly remarkable about his appearance. But something in the way he moved, deliberate, aware, controlled, commanded attention. Isaiah King had arrived. Isaiah King moved through the police station with the quiet confidence of someone completely at home in hostile territory. He didn't rush, didn't raise his voice, didn't make unnecessary movements. His eyes, the same piercing gaze that had unsettled Grayson in the photograph, scanned the room, missing nothing. Angela saw him first, relief washing over her face. Their eyes met briefly before Isaiah approached the front desk. "I'm here for my son, Jalen King," he stated, his voice deep and calm. The desk sergeant stared for a moment before finding his voice. "Sir, I'll need to see some ID." Isaiah reached slowly into his back pocket and produced his wallet. From it, he extracted not a standard driver's license, but a military ID with distinctive red markings along the border. The sergeant's eyes widened as he examined it. "One moment, sir," he said, suddenly respectful. "I'll get the sergeant." Wallace emerged from the hallway, still mid-argument with Grayson, when he spotted Isaiah. He froze, recognition flickering across his face. Wallace had served before joining the police force. He knew what those red markings meant. "Mr. King," Wallace said, extending his hand. "Sergeant Paul Wallace, there's been a misunderstanding with your son." "Has there?" Isaiah replied evenly, shaking the offered hand. His eyes shifted to Grayson, who stood nearby trying to mask his surprise with defiance. "Your son was brought in regarding a disturbance, but we found no evidence to support the claim," Wallace explained quickly. "He's being released immediately. No charges." "I'd like to see him now," Isaiah said. "It wasn't a request." "Of course, this way." As they moved toward the holding area, Grayson stepped forward. "Wait just a minute, we're still processing." Wallace cut him off. "Stand down, Grayson. You're suspended, remember?" Isaiah paused, turning to face Grayson. Fully for the first time. The officer felt a chill as those eyes assessed him, cataloging strengths, weaknesses, threat level. "Officer Grayson," Isaiah said, his tone conversational. "I understand you've been asking questions about me." Grayson swallowed hard but maintained his bravado. "Just doing my job, keeping the community safe." "By breaking into my property, by harassing my son?" Interesting interpretation of police work. Before Grayson could respond, Isaiah pulled a folded document from his pocket and handed it to Wallace. "This is a formal request for all records pertaining to Officer Grayson's interactions with my family, including today's incident. It's been filed through proper channels, but I wanted to deliver a courtesy copy in person." Wallace scanned the HeartScars document, noting official seals and signatures that went well beyond the local police department's authority. His face paled slightly. "We'll cooperate fully, Mr. King." Isaiah nodded once, then continued toward the holding room, leaving Grayson seething in confused anger. This wasn't the confrontation he had expected. No threats, no raised voices, just the quiet deployment of authority that Grayson couldn't begin to understand. Jalen looked up as the door opened, expecting to see Grayson again. Instead, his father stood in the doorway. For a moment, the 16-year-old's composure cracked. Relief, love, and a hint of worry crossed his face before he controlled his expression again. "Dad," he said simply. Isaiah crossed the room in 3 strides and placed a hand on his son's shoulder, a gesture more powerful than a hug would have been. "You okay?" Jalen nodded. "I'm good. Let's go home." As they left the holding room, Angela joined them, forming a protective triangle around their son. The Kings moved through the station like a single unit, eyes forward, dignity intact. Grayson watched them go, frustration building inside him. This wasn't over. He'd been publicly humiliated, his authority undermined. Something about Isaiah King set off every alarm bell in Grayson's head. The man was dangerous. He was sure of it. After turning in his badge and gun, Grayson sat in his car in the station parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The suspension meant he no longer had official access to police resources, but he still had contacts, favors he could call in. That evening, while the King family gathered at their kitchen table for the first meal together in months, Grayson was hunched over his home computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. He had a friend in military records, someone who owed him. It took several calls and the promise of future favors. But finally, he got what he wanted. Access to a restricted database. Isaiah King's name brought up a file, most of it blacked out. But there was enough. His service record showed deployments to locations Grayson had never heard of, during time frames that didn't match known operations. And there it was, blinking at the top of the screen. Active classified operative. Not retired. Active. Grayson sat back, running his hands through his hair. What the hell had he stumbled into? And more importantly, what was an active classified operative doing living in a suburban neighborhood in Oak Ridge Heights? At the King residence, after Jalen had gone to bed, Isaiah and Angela sat in the living room, voices low. "How bad is it?" Angela asked. "Manageable," Isaiah replied. "For now. But this Grayson, he's unpredictable, dangerous in his ignorance. He broke into our shed. Found your box." Isaiah nodded. "I know. It was a test. The lock was deliberately left open. Nothing in there gives away anything important. And the photo? Just enough to make him curious without revealing anything specific." Angela shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips despite the situation. "You were testing him even then. I needed to know what kind of man we're dealing with. Now I do. And the worst kind. One with a wounded ego and something to prove." Isaiah's expression hardened slightly. "He'll keep coming. He's already accessed restricted databases." Angela's eyes widened. "How do you know?" "Because I was notified. The moment he did. That's protocol. What happens now?" Isaiah was quiet for a moment. "Now we wait. See what he does next. The team is in place. He's being watched." "And Jalen? He was arrested today, Isaiah, in front of his friends, because of this man's vendetta." "I know. And Officer Grayson will learn that was a mistake." Isaiah's voice remained calm, but there was something in his tone that would have made Grayson's blood run cold. "You've stepped into shadows bigger than you know." Meanwhile, as Grayson finally left his house late that night, headed to a bar to drown his frustration and plot his next move, he didn't notice the car parked 2 blocks away, didn't see the high-powered optics tracking his movement, didn't hear the soft voice speaking into a secure communication device. Through the scope, crosshairs centered briefly on Grayson's chest before moving away. "He's poked the wrong ghost," the observer murmured, lowering the device. "And he doesn't even know it yet." The nondescript truck rolled slowly along the outskirts of Oak Ridge Heights, headlights off, moving with deliberate purpose through the darkness. It was just past midnight when Isaiah King parked at the edge of town, beneath the shadow of an old oak tree. He sat motionless for several minutes, eyes scanning the surrounding area, checking and rechecking for anomalies or signs of surveillance. This was protocol, ingrained after years of operations in places where a single mistake meant death. Though he was home now, in quiet suburban America, those instincts remained razor-sharp. Especially tonight. Isaiah had arrived earlier than planned. The incident with Jalen's arrest had accelerated his timeline, forcing him to cut short his mission overseas. Few people understood what Isaiah actually did for a living. Even fewer knew the importance of the work he'd just left unfinished to protect his family. After confirming the area was secure, Isaiah emerged from the truck. He wore simple clothes, jeans, a dark jacket, boots, nothing that would draw attention. His movements were fluid and silent as he made his way through a series of backyards and side streets, avoiding main roads and security cameras. Isaiah had mapped every approach to his home years ago when they first moved to Oak Ridge Heights. He knew every blind spot, every potential vantage point, every escape route. Not because he was paranoid, but because he was thorough. He paused at Mrs. Jenkins' garden, remembering how she'd told Officer Grayson about their family, not maliciously. The elderly woman had always been kind to them, but people rarely understood the danger of casual conversation. The King house was dark, except for a small light in the kitchen. Isaiah approached from the rear, entering through a side door with a key few knew existed. He moved through the house silently, knowing exactly which floorboards would creak and avoiding them instinctively. Angela was waiting in the kitchen, a cup of tea growing cold between her hands. She didn't startle when he appeared. After 16 years of marriage to a ghost, she'd grown accustomed to his silent arrivals. "You're early," she said softly, rising to embrace him. "Had to be," Isaiah replied, holding her tightly for a moment before stepping back to look at her. "Where is he?" "Upstairs, asleep." Angela studied her husband's face, reading the subtle signs of fatigue and tension that others would miss. "How bad is it?" "Complicated." Isaiah moved to the refrigerator, pouring himself a glass of water. "The mission was nearly complete when I got word about what happened here. I had to hand it off to Miller and Jackson." Angela nodded, understanding the significance. Isaiah rarely abandoned operations. For him to do so meant he considered the threat to his family serious. "They'll contain the situation," Isaiah continued, "but my early departure raised flags. Questions will be asked. By whom? Everyone." Isaiah's slight smile held no humor. "From the secretary down to local assets. An operative of my classification doesn't just walk away mid-mission unless something critical has happened." "Something critical did happen," Angela said firmly. "Your son was targeted, arrested without cause." Isaiah nodded, his expression hardening, briefly. "Yes, and Officer Grayson will learn what that means." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the reunion both sweet and shadowed by the circumstances that prompted it. "He's changed since you last saw him," Angela said eventually, "growing up so fast." "He handled himself well," Isaiah noted with quiet pride. "Stayed calm, didn't escalate. Just like his father." Isaiah smiled, a genuine one this time. "I should go up, see him." "He'll be happy you're home," Angela said, squeezing his hand. "Even under these circumstances." Isaiah moved silently up the stairs, pausing outside Jalen's door. He listened to his son's steady breathing for a moment before quietly opening the door. Jalen lay asleep, one arm thrown over his face. Isaiah stood watching him, struck once again by how quickly children grow. His work had taken him away too, often left too many gaps in his son's life. Yet somehow, Jalen had become a young man any father would be proud of, dignified, controlled, principled. As if sensing his father's presence, Jalen stirred, his eyes opening slowly. For a moment he stared at the figure in his doorway, then sat up quickly. "Dad?" "Hey, son." Isaiah moved into the room, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Sorry to wake you." In the dim light from the hallway, Jalen studied his father's face. There were new lines around his eyes, a fresh scar near his temple. But his presence was unchanged, solid, reliable, powerful in its quietness. "You're not supposed to be back for another month," Jalen said. "Plans changed." Isaiah placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Heard you had some trouble." Jalen looked down, a hint of shame crossing his face. "I shouldn't have told that cop about you being in Special Forces. Mom always said—" "You did nothing wrong," Isaiah interrupted firmly. "The officer targeted you because of who you are, not what you said." Jalen nodded slowly, processing his father's words. He wouldn't stop. Kept pushing, asking questions about you. "I know. And now he's facing consequences for his actions. Are you in trouble? For coming back early?" Isaiah smiled slightly. "Nothing I can't handle." They talked for nearly an hour, father and son reconnecting after months apart. Isaiah spoke of patience, of legacy, of the discipline required to face injustice, without becoming it, not lecturing but sharing one generation to another. The hardest battles, Isaiah told him, are fought with restraint, not rage. Remember that. Eventually, Jalen's eyes grew heavy again. Before leaving him to sleep, Isaiah asked casually, "This Officer Grayson, tell me everything." The next morning, while Jalen was at school, Isaiah left the house before sunrise. He drove to the outskirts of town, to an old diner that had been there since he was a boy. Inside, 3 elderly black men sat at a corner booth, drinking coffee and playing dominoes. They looked up as Isaiah entered, recognition and respect in their eyes. "Well, look who the wind blew in," said Walter Dixon, the oldest of the 3 at 82. "Isaiah King, back among the living." Isaiah smiled, clasping each man's hand firmly before sliding into the booth. These men had known him since childhood, had watched him grow, leave for service, return changed. They were elders in the community, respected voices whose influence ran deeper than most realized. "Just passing through," Isaiah said, accepting the coffee the waitress brought without having to order. "Heard your boy had some trouble with that new officer," said James Wilson, a retired postal worker who knew everyone's business. "Grayson, right? Bad news, that one." Isaiah nodded. "Seems to have developed an unhealthy interest in my family." The third man, Reverend Thomas Baker, studied Isaiah carefully. "You didn't come here just to catch up, son. What do you need from us?" Isaiah had always appreciated the Reverend's directness. "Information, community eyes. Grayson's been suspended, but that won't stop him. I need to know if he makes any moves." The 3 men exchanged glances, a silent communication forged through decades of friendship. "Consider it done," Walter said finally. "We'll put the word out, quiet-like." "Thank you." Isaiah sipped his coffee. "And the rest of the town?" "What's the temperature?" "Mixed," Reverend Baker replied honestly. "Some folks were upset about how your boy was treated. Others," he shrugged. "Some things don't change," Isaiah observed. "Some do," James countered. "When you left here 20 years ago, a black family couldn't even live in Oak Ridge Heights. Now your son walks those streets. Not always easy, but possible." Isaiah nodded, acknowledging the truth in James's words. "Progress comes slow, but it comes," Reverend Baker agreed. "Now tell us about this Special Forces business. Always knew you were doing something serious, but you never did share details." Isaiah smiled. "And I still won't. But I promise, when this is over, we'll have a proper talk." As Isaiah left the diner, he felt a familiar comfort in reconnecting with the men who had helped shape him. He had left Oak Ridge Heights as a restless teenager, frustrated by its limitations and prejudices. He'd returned now and then over the years, but always briefly, always partly in shadow. Few knew he'd been quietly watching over his hometown all long. Meanwhile, Officer Bradley Grayson sat in his apartment, surrounded by printouts, notes, and empty coffee cups. His suspension had only fueled his obsession. The humiliation of having his badge and gun taken, in front of the Kings no less, burned like acid in his stomach. But Grayson believed he was close to something big. The partial file he'd accessed showed Isaiah King wasn't just some ex-military guy with an attitude. He was active, classified, connected to operations Grayson couldn't even find references to, the kind of operative whose very existence was denied in official channels. "Why here?" Grayson muttered, staring at the sparse information he'd gathered. "Why live in a place like this if you're some elite government asset?" The question had consumed him for days. His working theory: Isaiah King was dirty, running some kind of operation right under everyone's noses, using his classified status as cover. It was the only explanation that made sense to Grayson's suspicious mind. He picked up his phone, dialing a number he'd called multiple times already. "Daily Tribune," answered a tired voice. "Frank, it's Grayson again. Did you look into what I sent you?" The local reporter sighed audibly. "Bradley, we've been through this. I can't run a story accusing a citizen of being some kind of secret agent without evidence, especially not after you've been suspended for harassing his family." "I'm telling you, there's something here," Grayson insisted. This guy shows up out of nowhere, flashes some classified ID, and suddenly the entire department is walking on eggshells? That doesn't strike you as suspicious? What strikes me as suspicious is your fixation on this family, Frank replied bluntly. Let it go before you lose more than just your badge. Grayson hung up, fuming. Nobody believed him. Nobody saw what he saw. Fine. He'd find proof himself. Then they'd all understand what they were dealing with. He picked up another phone, a burner, purchased with cash, and made a different call. The man who answered had no name, just a service Grayson had used occasionally to dig up dirt on suspects. I need everything on Isaiah King, Grayson said without preamble. Military records, financial transactions, travel history. Whatever you can get. That'll cost you, the voice replied. And if he's really government, it could get complicated. Just do it, Grayson snapped, and put together a file on his kid too, Jalen King. After hanging up, Grayson formed a new plan. He would gather enough evidence to expose Isaiah King publicly, force the truth into the open, and what better way to do that than through the man's son? Special Forces dad? Grayson muttered, a bitter smile forming. Total fraud. And I'm going to prove it. While Grayson plotted, Maya Thompson was working on her own investigation. The video of Jalen's arrest had sparked outrage among their classmates. Maya had edited it carefully, adding context about the previous harassment, and posted it to her social media accounts. The response was immediate and widespread. Local community forums exploded with debate. Some defended the police, others expressed outrage at the clear targeting of a black teenager. And then, strangely, military forums began to light up with cryptic comments. One caught Maya's attention. Isaiah King? If it's who I think it is, that officer has no idea what he stepped into. The comment came from a verified account belonging to a retired Army colonel with connections to special operations. Maya screenshotted it before it was deleted hours later. As the online storm brewed, Isaiah visited the police station, calmly identifying himself at the front desk. Not to make threats or demands, but simply to introduce himself properly to the department leadership. Chief Williams welcomed him nervously in his office. Mr. King, I want to assure you that Officer Grayson's actions do not reflect our department's policies or values. I understand, Isaiah replied, his tone neutral. Individual. Officers make individual choices. It's how those choices are addressed that defines an organization. The chief nodded, uncomfortable under Isaiah's steady gaze. The investigation into the shed incident is ongoing, and Officer Grayson remains suspended pending its completion. And my son's unlawful arrest? Chief Williams shifted in his seat. We're reviewing the circumstances. There appears to have been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Isaiah repeated, the words flat. Is that what you call racial profiling and false arrest in Oak Ridge Heights? The chief had no good answer. Isaiah didn't press further, simply stood and handed the man his card, plain white with only a name and number. If Officer Grayson makes contact with my family again, call me directly, day or night. After Isaiah left, Chief Williams stared at the card for a long moment before picking up his phone. He had received a call earlier that morning from someone at the Pentagon, a brief professional conversation that had left him deeply unsettled. Do you understand who Isaiah King is? The military official had asked him. Do you realize what his service record contains? The chief hadn't known how to respond. Now, looking at the simple white card, he wondered just what kind of storm was brewing in his quiet town. Officer Bradley Grayson crouched in the darkness, watching the King residence through night vision binoculars. Behind him, 4 other men waited, off-duty officers who shared his suspicions and resentments. This wasn't an official police operation. There were no warrants, no probable cause, just Grayson's obsession and his ability to convince others to follow him. Remember, we're just gathering intelligence, Grayson whispered. No confrontation. We get in, document whatever we find, and get out. The others nodded, adjusting their tactical gear, equipment borrowed from the department without authorization. All carried sidearms, though Grayson had insisted they were only for protection. Target's house is dark, one officer murmured. Looks empty. Intel says they're at a school event until 9, Grayson replied. Gives us about an hour. What Grayson didn't know was that his intel, a casual conversation overheard at the grocery store, had been deliberately staged. The Kings were not at any school event. The house was empty because Isaiah had anticipated exactly this move. As Grayson led his team across the rear lawn toward the house, hidden cameras tracked their movement. In a secure location 3 blocks away, Isaiah watched the feed on a laptop, his expression unreadable. Predictable, he murmured to an unseen companion. Exactly as expected. Grayson picked the lock on the back door with practiced efficiency, and the unauthorized raid began. The team moved through the house methodically, photographing rooms, searching drawers, checking for hidden compartments or safes. There's nothing here, one officer said after 20 minutes of searching. Just normal family stuff. This is a waste of time, Bradley. Keep looking, Grayson insisted. Check under furniture behind picture frames. He's hiding something. As the frustrated team continued their search, none of them noticed the small devices Isaiah had placed on their vehicles. While they invaded his home, he had disabled all 5 of their cars. Nothing dramatic, just subtle mechanical issues that would prevent them from starting. A message. A warning. When they finally left the house finding nothing incriminating despite their thorough search, the reality of their situation sank in quickly. My car won't start, the first officer reported, panic edging into his voice. One by one, each discovered the same problem. Grayson kicked his tire in frustration, the magnitude of their miscalculation becoming clear. They were stranded in tactical gear after illegally entering a home. He knew, Grayson realized, cold dread washing over him. Somehow he knew we were coming. As they debated their options, Isaiah made a single phone call from his secure location. Not to the police. That would have been the expected move. Instead, he contacted an old military friend who now worked at the Pentagon. It's King, he said simply. I need to call in that favor. The next morning, as Grayson and his accomplices dealt with the fallout of their failed raid, written reprimands, extended suspensions, possible criminal charges, Chief Williams received another call from Washington. This time, the message was crystal clear. The situation in Oak Ridge Heights had drawn attention at the highest levels. Your problem is about to get very public, the military contact warned. I suggest you get ahead of it before it buries your career. Isaiah's strategic response to the raid had been calculated for maximum effect with minimum force. He hadn't confronted Grayson directly, hadn't engaged physically, hadn't even called local authorities. Instead, he'd simply documented everything and let the system work. But Grayson, consumed by humiliation and desperate to salvage his credibility, made his most reckless move yet. The next day, he showed up at Oak Ridge High during lunch period. Without a badge or authority but still carrying the air of law enforcement, he approached Jalen in the crowded cafeteria. Jalen King, you're under arrest, he announced loudly, grabbing the teenager's arm. Students gasped and backed away. Teachers moved forward uncertainly. On what charge? Jalen asked calmly, though his heart raced. Obstruction of justice and interfering with a police investigation, Grayson improvised. Your father is under investigation for serious crimes, and you've been withholding information. It was completely fabricated, but Grayson was beyond reason now. In his mind, this public arrest would force Isaiah into the open, make him reveal whatever secrets he was hiding. Maya, seated nearby, immediately began live streaming. This is happening right now at Oak Ridge High, she narrated, her voice steady, despite her shock. A suspended police officer is attempting to arrest Jalen King without a warrant or cause. The video spread instantly, jumping from her social accounts to local news sites within minutes. As Grayson marched Jalen out of the school in handcuffs, a crowd of outraged students and confused teachers followed. The principal tried to intervene. Officer Grayson, you have no authority here. Release that student immediately. Stay out of this, Grayson snapped. This is police business. You're not active police, the principal countered. I'm calling the department right now. But Grayson was already pushing Jalen into his personal vehicle. In his deluded state, he believed he was finally taking control of the situation, forcing a confrontation that would reveal the truth. Within an hour, the Oak Ridge Heights police station was surrounded by protesters, students, parents, community members outraged by the video Maya had shared. Inside, Isaiah King walked through, the front doors alone, his demeanor calm but his purpose unmistakable. Chief Williams met him in the lobby, deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. King, I want to assure you this was not an authorized action. Grayson is acting completely outside our authority." "Where is my son?" Isaiah asked, his voice quiet, but carrying an edge that made everyone in the room straighten. "In the interview room with Grayson. We've sent officers to remove him and release Jalen, but—" Isaiah didn't wait for the chief to finish. He walked directly toward the interview rooms, his movement purposeful and unhurried. No one attempted to stop him. When he entered the room where Grayson was attempting to interrogate Jalen, the suspended officer looked up in surprise that quickly turned to defiance. "Perfect timing," Grayson said, a desperate smile stretching across his face. "Now we can get to the truth. What are you really doing in Oak Ridge Heights, King? Running ops? Using your family as cover?" Isaiah didn't respond to Grayson at all. Instead, he looked at his son. "You okay?" Jalen nodded, his composure intact despite the circumstances. Isaiah turned back to Grayson, placing a folder on the table. Between them, inside were legal documents, surveillance footage of the illegal raid, and military credentials that dwarfed anything Grayson had managed to access. "Officer Grayson," Isaiah said calmly, "you are currently holding a minor against his will, having abducted him from school property while impersonating a police officer. These are federal crimes." Grayson's confidence wavered. "I'm investigating a potential national security threat." "No," Isaiah corrected him. "You're persecuting a family because your ego can't accept being wrong. And now, you've crossed lines that can't be uncrossed." Behind the scenes, Grayson's superiors were being flooded with calls, not just from local officials and angry parents, but from military brass, congressional offices, and intelligence agencies. "Do you realize who you're dealing with?" One caller demanded of Chief Williams. "Do you have any idea what King has done for this country?" As two uniformed officers entered to remove Grayson, he made one last desperate accusation. "He's a ghost operative, running some kind of deep cover mission right here in our town." The officers exchanged glances, embarrassed by their former colleague's breakdown. They led him away, his protests echoing down the hallway. Isaiah helped Jalen to his feet, checking the marks on his wrist from the handcuffs. "Let's go home." As they walked through the station, officers and staff stepped aside respectfully. Outside, the crowd of protesters cheered as Jalen emerged. Maya pushed through to reach them, her phone still live streaming. "Jalen, are you okay?" "What happened? In there?" Jalen managed a small smile. "I'm fine. It's over now." Isaiah placed a protective hand on his son's shoulder, guiding him toward their car. The crowd parted before them, voices offering support and outrage on their behalf. But in his eyes, those who knew how to look could see the truth. It wasn't over. Grayson had been removed, but he remained a threat, unpredictable, desperate, and now totally unhinged. Later that night, as Grayson sat in a holding cell awaiting charges, he made a decision. If the system wouldn't listen, if no one would believe him about Isaiah King, then he would take matters into his own hands one last time. He needed leverage, something to force King into the open, to make everyone see the truth, and he knew exactly what that leverage would be. The morning after Jalen's public arrest and release, Officer Bradley Grayson was nowhere to be found. His apartment sat empty, his phone went straight to voicemail, and the ankle monitor he'd been fitted with as a condition of his release had been cut off and left on his kitchen counter. Chief Williams called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. "I want Grayson found, now. Before he does something we'll all regret." But Grayson had vanished, his personal vehicle discovered abandoned at a bus station 20 miles outside of town. The man had gone completely off-grid, drawing on skills, from his brief military training to evade detection. At the King residence, Isaiah received the news with a calm that unsettled the officer who delivered it. "You don't seem concerned," the officer observed. "Concerned isn't the right word," Isaiah replied. Prepared is more accurate. After the officer left, Angela turned to her husband. You know he's coming for us. Isaiah nodded. For Jalen specifically. Grayson needs leverage. We should leave town, Angela suggested, fear evident in her voice for the first time since the ordeal began. Just until they find him. Running isn't an option, Isaiah said. This ends here, one way or another. They decided Jalen would stay home from school, a precaution that turned out to be prescient. Just before noon, as Jalen sat at the kitchen table working on homework, a text message arrived from Maya's phone. Need to talk. Emergency. Meet at Crawford Park Trail. Don't tell parents. Jalen stared at the message, instinct telling him something was off. Maya wouldn't ask him to meet alone, not after everything that had happened, and she definitely wouldn't tell him to keep it from his parents. He showed the message to his father. Isaiah studied it briefly. Good instinct not to respond. It's not from Maya. A call to Maya's actual number confirmed their suspicion. She was in class, her phone in her backpack. Someone had created a fake number with her name. Grayson, Isaiah concluded, already moving to secure the house. He's making his move. Within minutes, Isaiah had activated security protocols that few civilian homes would possess. Reinforced locks engaged automatically, windows secured with invisible shatterproof film, security cameras activated around the perimeter. Stay inside. With Mom, Isaiah instructed Jalen. I need to move freely. What are you going to do? Jalen asked, watching his father check a small device that resembled a specialized phone. End this. Isaiah's voice held no anger, no excitement, just calm, certainty. But even Isaiah's careful planning couldn't anticipate every possibility. As Angela moved to the living room to close the curtains, the distinctive crack of breaking glass filled the house, followed immediately by the hiss of gas. Smoke grenades, Isaiah shouted. Out the back now! The Kings moved quickly toward the rear exit, but as Jalen reached the kitchen, a figure in a black tactical mask crashed through the side door, grabbing him in a chokehold. Don't move! Grayson shouted, his voice muffled behind his mask but unmistakable. He pressed a gun against Jalen's temple. Back up! All of you! Isaiah froze, assessing the situation with remarkable clarity despite the chaos. Angela stood beside him, her eyes locked on her son. Officer Grayson, Isaiah said evenly, you're making a mistake that can't be undone. Shut up, Grayson barked, tightening his grip on Jalen. You've been playing games long enough. Time for the truth. The smoke was thickening, making it difficult to see clearly. Grayson began backing toward the door, dragging Jalen with him. I'm taking your son somewhere to have a real conversation, Grayson announced. No interference, no special forces backup, no Pentagon calls, just us. And then everyone will know who you really are. Isaiah took a single step forward. Bradley, listen to me carefully. There are lines you don't cross even in war. This is one of them. Stay back, Grayson warned, his hand shaking slightly as he pressed the gun harder against Jalen's head. Isaiah stopped, his hands visible. Take me instead, I'm the one you want. No, Grayson laughed bitterly. You're too dangerous. The boy comes with me. You'll get instructions soon. With that, he dragged Jalen outside to a waiting car. As they sped away, Isaiah moved with startling efficiency, first ensuring Angela was safe, then activating a device on his wrist. Blackbird compromised, he spoke into it. Priority Alpha, tracking active. Angela clutched his arm. What did you do? Tell me you can find him. Isaiah's expression was grim but focused. Jalen's watch. It has a tracker. Military grade. Undetectable. The Buck teams you mentioned before, already mobilizing, Isaiah assured her. But I'm not waiting for them. Miles away, in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, Grayson forced Jalen into a metal chair, securing his hands with zip ties. The teenager remained calm despite his racing heart, his father's teachings echoing in his mind. When in danger, observe everything. Knowledge is survival. Grayson paced before him, gun still in hand, clearly unraveling. He'd removed his mask, revealing wild eyes and 3 days' growth of beard. "Your dad's some kind of operative, isn't he?" Grayson demanded. "Running missions right here in America, against Americans." Jalen said nothing, studying the warehouse instead. 2 exits, high windows, concrete floor, a camera set up on a tripod. Grayson planned to record whatever happened next. "The silent treatment won't help you," Grayson warned, leaning close. "I know enough already. Those classified files, the Pentagon calls, the surveillance equipment in your house, normal families don't live like that." Still, Jalen remained silent, his eyes steadily meeting Grayson's. The resemblance to Isaiah's unwavering gaze only infuriated the ex-officer more. "Talk!" Grayson shouted, slamming his hand on a nearby table. Jalen finally spoke, his voice surprisingly steady. "What do you want me to say? That my dad serves his country? That he protects people? That's not a secret." "Protects people?" Grayson scoffed. "Men like your father don't protect. They eliminate threats. They operate in the shadows. They kill." "Is that what this is about?" Jalen asked quietly. "You're scared of my dad?" The question struck a nerve. Grayson's hand tightened on his gun. "I'm not scared. I'm exposing the truth. People deserve to know when dangerous operatives are living among them." "The only dangerous person here is you," Jalen replied, his courage building. "You broke into our home, you arrested me illegally. Now you've kidnapped me at gunpoint. Who's the threat, Officer Grayson?" Before Grayson could respond, his phone buzzed. The text message contained only an address, this warehouse's address, followed by 3 words. "I'm coming in." Grayson's face paled. He rushed to the windows, scanning the area outside. Nothing. No movement, no vehicles, no sign of approach. But Isaiah King was coming. Somehow he'd found them already. "He's bluffing," Grayson muttered, though his shaking hands betrayed his fear. "There's no way he found us this fast." Jalen allowed himself a small smile. "You really don't know who my dad is, do you?" Meanwhile, Isaiah moved through the industrial district like a ghost, analyzing the warehouse from all angles before approaching. No backup, no tactical team. This was personal now, a father protecting his son, a line cross that demanded response. Inside, Grayson grew increasingly agitated, checking windows, barricading doors, preparing for a siege that could come from any direction. His original plan, to force Isaiah into revealing his true nature on camera, was unraveling as fear replaced anger. "Your dad thinks he's so special," Grayson hissed at Jalen. "Special forces, classified missions. But he's just a man. He bleeds like anyone else." "You're right," came Isaiah's voice, seemingly from everywhere and nowhere at once. The warehouses. Poor acoustics made it impossible to pinpoint. "I'm just a man, a father, and you have my son." Grayson spun wildly, gun extended, searching for the source. "Show yourself." "Let Jalen go, Bradley," Isaiah continued, his voice calm despite the tension. "Walk away. There's still a way out of this where nobody gets hurt." "Liar," Grayson shouted. "You've been waiting for this, a chance to eliminate me. That's what men like you do, isn't it? Silence threats?" There was a moment of complete stillness before a figure stepped from the shadows near the back of the warehouse. Isaiah King walked slowly into the open, hands empty and visible at his sides. No weapon, no tactical gear, just a man in jeans and a gray t-shirt. "If I wanted to eliminate you, Bradley," Isaiah said softly, "we wouldn't be having this conversation." Grayson trained his gun directly at Isaiah's chest. "Stay where you are. One more step and I'll shoot." Isaiah stopped, his eyes briefly meeting. Jalen's conveying reassurance before returning to Grayson. "You won't shoot. You're a police officer, not a murderer. Not yet, anyway." "You don't know what I am." Grayson's voice cracked with emotion. "Nobody does. Everyone looks at me like I'm crazy, but I know the truth. Men like you, operating on American soil, using your families as cover. Is that what you think I am?" Isaiah asked. "Some kind of domestic operative? I've seen your files, the classified missions, the Pentagon connections." Isaiah took another careful step forward. "Yes, I serve my country, in places most Americans never see, against threats they never know exist, but never against my own people. Never here. Stop moving, Grayson screamed, his finger tightening on the trigger. Or what? You'll shoot an unarmed man in front of his son? Is that who Bradley Grayson is? Isaiah continued his slow approach. You wanted the truth. Here it is. I protect people. From warlords, terrorists, those who prey on the innocent, that's all. No shadow government, no domestic operations. Just a soldier doing his duty. Fight me, Grayson demanded, desperation. Replacing reason. Fight like a man. Show everyone what you really are. In a sudden move, Grayson lunged forward, swinging his gun toward Jalen. But before he could take aim, Isaiah moved with breathtaking speed and precision. His hand struck Grayson's wrist at a precise pressure point, causing instant numbing. Just a gun clattered to the floor. Grayson swung wildly with his other hand, but Isaiah deflected each blow with minimal movement, using his opponent's momentum against him. It wasn't a fight. It was a demonstration of absolute control. Each of Grayson's increasingly frantic attacks was countered with calm efficiency. Finally, with a series of lightning-fast strikes to key pressure points, Isaiah disabled Grayson completely. The ex-officer collapsed to his knees, arms hanging useless at his sides, his nervous system temporarily short-circuited by Isaiah's precise technique. That's who I am, Isaiah said quietly, looking down at the defeated man. Someone trained to end conflicts with minimal force, to protect, not destroy. As he freed Jalen from the zip ties, the warehouse doors burst open. SWAT teams swarmed in, weapons raised, followed by Chief Williams and several federal agents in suits. Isaiah had called them before approaching, ensuring proper authorities would witness the resolution. Isaiah King, one of the federal agents, called. Pentagon sent us. You good? Isaiah nodded, one arm around his son's shoulders. We're good. Officer Grayson needs medical attention. Non-lethal takedown, but he'll need monitoring. As Grayson was secured and led away, screaming about conspiracies and cover-ups, news vans began arriving outside. The story had broken wide open. Cameras captured the moment Isaiah and Jalen emerged from the warehouse, walking tall despite the ordeal, and in that moment, the full truth about Isaiah King, decorated veteran, classified operative, and above, all a father, began to emerge into the light. 3 weeks after what local media dubbed the warehouse standoff, Oak Ridge Heights Town Hall was filled beyond capacity. Residents from all walks of life packed into the meeting room, spilling out into the hallways. At the front, Mayor Patricia Davis struggled to maintain order as voices competed to be heard. The past weeks had brought dramatic changes to the quiet suburb. Grayson faced multiple federal charges, from kidnapping to civil rights violations. The police department was under investigation. And Isaiah King, the man whose very existence had once been classified, had become the center of a community-wide conversation about race, justice, and protection. Please, everyone, Mayor Davis called over the din. Our guest speaker has arrived. The crowd quieted as Isaiah King walked to the podium. He wore a simple button-down shirt and slacks. No uniform, no visible signs of his military background. Yet he carried himself with unmistakable authority. Thank you for coming, Isaiah began, his deep voice carrying easily through the room. What happened to my family wasn't unique. It was just visible. It forced a conversation many would prefer to avoid. He paused, scanning the faces before him, some supportive, others still uncertain. I'm not here to assign blame or demand retribution. I'm here to talk about moving forward, about building a community where my son, where all our children, can walk home without fear. For the next 30 minutes, Isaiah spoke not with anger, but with wisdom. He called for accountability in the police department, for community oversight, for training that recognized and addressed implicit bias. But he also acknowledged the complexity of the situation, the vast majority of officers who served honorably, the real security concerns that communities faced. Officer Grayson failed, Isaiah said toward the end, not because he was suspicious of an unusual situation, but because he allowed that suspicion to become prejudice, and that prejudice to become persecution. We can do better. We must do better. The Room erupted in applause when he finished. Even those who had come prepared to argue found themselves nodding in agreement. This was not the vengeful operative Grayson had imagined, but a measured, thoughtful citizen who had served his country in shadows most would never know. In the weeks that followed, change came quickly to Oak Ridge Heights. Chief Williams resigned, replaced by a reform-minded captain from a neighboring district. New training protocols were implemented for all officers. Community oversight boards were established with real power to review complaints. For Jalen, life took unexpected turns. As well, when he returned to school, he found himself viewed differently, not just as the kid with the mysterious dad, but as someone who had faced injustice with dignity and strength. Younger students, especially boys of color, began seeking him out for advice and support. "I don't know what to tell them," Jalen admitted to his father one evening. "I just did what you taught me." Isaiah smiled. "That's exactly what they need to hear. Not grand speeches, just honest guidance. Dignity isn't taught in classrooms, son. It's passed from one generation to the next." Maya Thompson's journalism took flight in the aftermath. The video she'd recorded of Jalen's arrest was shown in civics classes across the country, sparking discussions about civil rights, law enforcement, and community responsibilities. Her detailed reporting on the events earned her a prestigious scholarship for young journalists. "I couldn't have done it without you," she told Jalen one day after school. "You gave me the courage to keep filming when I was scared." "I think you had that courage all along," Jalen replied. "You just needed a reason to use it." Their friendship deepened in the following months, built on shared experience and mutual respect that hinted at something more to come. Meanwhile, Isaiah faced decisions of his own. His cover blown, his family's location compromised, he received multiple offers to relocate. New identities, new positions, new beginnings far from Oak Ridge Heights. He turned them all down. Instead, Isaiah did something that surprised everyone who thought they knew him. He opened a training center in the heart of town, not a typical martial arts studio, but a place focused on leadership, self-defense, and community service for local youth. The King's Self-Defense and Leadership Academy quickly became a gathering place for young people from all backgrounds. Isaiah taught not just physical techniques but the mental discipline that had guided his own life. The waiting list grew longer each month. Even more surprising were those who came seeking redemption. Several residents who had once crossed the street when Jalen walked by now enrolled their children in Isaiah's classes. Mrs. Whitaker, who had always watched suspiciously from behind her curtains, brought cookies to the King's home and apologized tearfully for years of silent judgment. "Change comes slow," Isaiah told Angela as they watched these transformations unfold. "But it comes." Bradley Grayson watched these developments from a prison cell. Deemed mentally unstable after his breakdown, he was held in a secure psychiatric facility pending trial. His television access was limited, but he caught glimpses of Isaiah on the news, speaking at community events, working with children, being celebrated as a local hero. The sight filled him with bitter regret. In his distorted pursuit of truth, he had destroyed his career, his freedom, and his reputation. And for what? To expose a man whose true nature turned out to be exactly what his son had claimed, a dedicated soldier who served with honor. In Oak Ridge Heights, the story continued to evolve. The incident that began with racial profiling had sparked genuine soul-searching throughout the community. Difficult conversations about bias and privilege took place in living rooms and coffee shops. Old barriers began to crumble, slowly but surely. 2 months after opening his academy, Isaiah received an unexpected visitor. James Wilson, one of the elderly men he'd met at the diner, arrived with a small wooden box. "Found this in my attic," James explained, placing it on Isaiah's desk. "Thought you might want it for your students." Inside was a newspaper from 1968, its yellowed pages carefully preserved. The headline read, "Local Youth Breaks Color Barrier at Oak Ridge Academy." Below was a photo of a young black man in a military school uniform, James's older brother, who had died in Vietnam. "First steps are the hardest," James said, "but they make the next ones possible." Isaiah nodded, understanding the gift's significance. "I'll display it here," Remind them that what we're doing isn't new. It's continuing work that began long before us. Later that evening, as the King family gathered for dinner, Jalen shared news from school. Mr. Peterson asked if I'd speak at graduation about resilience and dignity. Angela smiled proudly. What did you say? I said yes. Dad always says real strength isn't loud. It's knowing who you are, even when nobody believes you. Isaiah looked at his son. No longer a boy, but a young man shaped by extraordinary circumstances. Whatever path Jalen chose, whatever future he built, it would be founded on the quiet strength that had carried him through these challenges. As they finished dinner, Isaiah's secure phone buzzed with a message. He checked it discreetly, then set it aside. Everything okay? Angela asked, recognizing the look in his eyes. Just checking in, Isaiah replied. Old friends making sure we're all right. The message had been simple. If you ever need us, we're still watching. A reminder that while this chapter of their story might be concluding, the broader world Isaiah operated in continued its vigilant rotation. Shadows and light, always in balance. For the Kings, life would never return to what it had been before. Their privacy was altered, their story now part of the community's narrative. But with that change came opportunity to transform a painful experience into something meaningful, to help build the world they wished to see. As evening settled over Oak Ridge Heights, Jalen walked outside to shoot some baskets in the driveway. The same street, the same houses surrounded him, but something fundamental had shifted. Mrs. Whitaker waved from her garden. Mr. Peterson nodded respectfully from his evening walk. Children called Jalen's name as they rode bikes past the house. No sideways glances, no suspicious stares, no curtains twitching, just neighbors, seeing each other clearly for perhaps the first time. And somewhere, beyond the peaceful suburban streets, beyond the immediate concerns of daily life, Isaiah King's military contacts monitored the situation from a distance, not because the danger remained, but because that's what family did for one another. They watched. They waited. They stood ready, just a glimpse into a much larger world that most would never see or know existed. What would you risk to protect those you love from injustice? How far would you go when the system fails your family? Isaiah King showed us his answer. What's yours? Like and subscribe for more stories that explore the shadows where courage meets consequence.